What's going on, guys? Welcome to part 2 of the 2-part series on how I scaled my 7-figure land investing business, as well as my entrepreneurial journey. So, if you guys will remember, the last time in this video, we left off in good old Virginia. I was doing an internship. Suffice to say, the business was a bit of a mess. It did not turn out to be what I thought it was. So after 1 year there, to pretty much the T, caught a flight back to San Diego. And during that time, I had met a girl.
Hello, Sumner.
I had met a girl named Kayla. Funnily enough, her and I went way back when I was taking classes in San Diego. We had met in a psychology class. She had a boyfriend at that time. Ironically, she was dating a guy that also went to my high school, but none of us knew each other. It was this very weird circumstance. Well, our paths crossed towards the end of my stay in Virginia. And so I moved back, and she was also in San Diego. So I moved back, had her there kind of as an anchor, but frankly, on a professional level, I had no idea what I was gonna do. I didn't have any ideas I was really iterating on. I just came from this defunct internship, and I needed money. I needed money really bad. And I knew that I needed money to start something. I didn't quite know what I was gonna start. So the way I looked at it is I gave myself 6 months. I said, okay, I'm giving myself 6 months to ideate. I don't wanna just glom on to the next idea that comes to me, because I had had so many false starts. I had a little bit of success, then back down, a little bit of success, then back down. I wanted to be a little more methodical in terms of where I put my energy next. You know, what I had learned is a small project takes the same amount of time as a big project. Frankly, they're gonna eat up a lot of your life, no matter how big the outcome could be or how small the outcome could be. So I wanted to be thoughtful in terms of what my next move was. And so I moved back to San Diego, gave myself 6 months, but I needed money. So I went and got a job, the only real job I had ever had. I applied to the company called Slide Genius. They were like a design agency selling PowerPoints to Fortune 500 companies, also selling to like companies going to raise VC monies who would make pitch decks, who are either working with like really early startups or working with like really big established companies. I was working there as a sales guy. One of the perks of the job, one of the reasons I took the job, is the founder, his name was Rick. Him and I really hit it off, and he was a bit of a mentor to me. He had kind of a similar story, riddled with many ups and downs in his entrepreneurial journey, and Fly Genius was like the first thing that he created that really worked. And so we hit it off. We were just kind of cut from the same cloth. So he was a bit of a mentor for me. That was kind of a bonus of that role. But frankly, you know, after 60 days there, I'm like, dude, this is not for me. I don't know how I'm gonna do this long term. But I kept on ideating. I said, I don't want to rush into anything, listening to podcasts, doing my due diligence. Got into trying to wholesale houses, kind of as a weird, I guess, happenstance. I wanted to buy a house in San Diego. I also wanted to test the idea of wholesaling. So started door knocking, started sending handwritten letters, had a lot of like people yell at me, no real momentum. Like it was just all kind of negative. I don't really know what I was gonna do with it. Like I didn't know if I was gonna wholesale a house or try to buy a house. I just thought real estate made sense. People make money in real estate. That seemed like a good idea. What I started to learn as I got deeper into it though, is that a lot of real estate, as most people know it, is more of like a wealth preservation strategy, right? It's rare that you get rich from buying rentals, buying apartments. Like that's usually something that you do once you have money and you want to preserve your money. It's not a great way to create money, at least not in my opinion. And so kind of going down that rabbit hole with listening to Bigger Pockets, like just getting into the podcast world with real estate. But the more I got into it, I'm like, I need a lot of money to do this. I have no track record to go raise money. I need something to where it's more based on my hustle, right? Like my hustle can go and drive results. I don't feel like I could hustle, at least at the time I could hustle my way to an apartment complex. So I put the pause on the wholesaling, didn't like it. Had a couple people really scream at me in San Diego. I was not door knocking in Poway. I was like, all right, this is not for me. Started thinking up some e-com ideas, coming up with different random ideas that I could do for like a product launch, thinking about like designing my own product, thinking about all sorts of different niches, flashlights, knives. I mean, I was getting way in the weeds. That's always how I've been. Like, I've always enjoyed that ideating process. And then I listened to, actually on Bigger Pockets, I listened to a podcast about land. I can't remember the guy's name. He's a German guy. I listened to the podcast about land. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Like I've already been going direct to owner, writing handwritten notes to sellers for houses. What if I did that for land, right? And so I started Googling, getting online, trying to look for ways to go and aggregate a tax delinquent list. At that time, everyone in land was talking tax delinquent. But we'll talk about why that's not really an important strategy in my opinion. But that's what all the rage was. Everyone was talking tax delinquent. So I'm like, okay. I couldn't find one in San Diego. I started getting into other states. I got into Nevada. I actually found a tax delinquent list in Elko County, Nevada. I had no idea where that was at the time. I looked it up on a map. I said, geez, that place is really far away from me. It looks really barren. There's like, I don't know, 12,000 people that live there or something crazy. But I got this big old tax delinquent list. And the beautiful thing was it was hosted online. Like a lot of the treasurer's websites and stuff, they would make you pay them and you get like a CD-ROM with the information, or you'd have to go and pay them. They're like email it over to you. They literally just had this Excel sheet hosted on their website. So I'm like, well, I could have made it any easier. So that's where I'm going to start. So pulled a list, did not know how to come up with an offer. So all I did was just like, hi, my name's Sumner. I live in San Diego. I want to buy your land. That was kind of the shtick. Hand wrote a bunch of them. My girlfriend and I, Kayla, at the time would stay up super late, handwriting these notes. And when I get off work, I'd handwrite them. During the weekends, I'd handwrite them. And then we'd just go and drop them and mail them out. What's funny is I remember writing them. I have no memory of actually mailing them out, which is weird. I was mailing those out like the summer of 2019. And I remember driving up to Thanksgiving. I was driving up to Thanksgiving with my mom and her husband at the time. They ended up getting a divorce. Don't know why I'm telling you that, but hey. And they were up in Ventura, California. So we're driving up the interstate. And I was feeling a little defeated. You know, I'd set these out a couple months ago. Nothing happened. And as I'm driving up, I get a call. And what's so funny, and it's like, it's almost cute in my ignorance, but like I had prepped my voicemail, got my voicemail dialed in. I took like 15 different takes, like, hey, this is Sumner. I want to buy your land. Like, you called the right person. And I remember someone called when we were driving up and I just let it go to voicemail. And sure enough, it's some guy. He's like, hey, I'm Bill. I got your letter a couple months ago and my dad owns a property. And sure enough, his dad owned a piece of land in Elko, Nevada. I think he owned 2 5-acre lots. And they wanted to sell them, but it was the son that was calling me. And I called him back immediately on the drive up. I remember like my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I was so nervous. And he wanted to sell. He wanted like $2,000 a property or something along those lines. I had no idea how to underwrite them. I mean, I didn't even know how to find these properties on a map. I mean, when I say I knew nothing coming into this business, I mean, I knew nothing. The only thing I knew somewhat was business building. Like I was way more of an entrepreneur than I was an investor or a real estate guy. I mean, I didn't even know what a deed was, right? So this guy's saying he wants $2,000 a property and I'm thinking, well, you know, these are 5-acre lots, like $400 an acre. That seems like a really good deal. Sure enough, in Elko, Nevada, 400 an acre actually might be kind of expensive. I mean, it's so rural out there. But I couldn't figure out how to underwrite these properties. So I hit him with a lower offer. I forget exactly what it was. I think I said like, I'll do $1,500 a property. Just because I figured, well, if he wants $2,000, if I get it lower than what he's asking for, it's probably a good deal. I mean, literally my logic was just negotiate lower and that's probably a good deal. I don't even know what I would have done had I got these properties. I couldn't look up the APN. I knew nothing about them. Well, we went back and forth for weeks. And I remember during that Thanksgiving, man, it's all I could think about. I want to get this land deal. I want to get this land deal. And for context, at the time, at my W-2, even though I was a sales guy, I mean, I was making $60,000, maybe $75,000 a year. Like not a lot of money, especially in Southern California. And I knew like I was way underpaid. I had made way more money doing other things previously. So I knew I was underpaid. Like I knew it was a bad fit, but I also knew I needed time to experiment, right? I needed to throw a bunch of different stuff at the wall in that 6-month period to see what was going to stick. And then I could go all in. So I just needed something to tide me over the interim. But I remember getting paychecks and they're like $1,200 a week. And I was like, dude, this is insane. This is highway robbery. I felt like I was getting the short end of the stick. And I learned a lot. And frankly, I took so much away from Rick in the business and really helped me in my business. And in fact, we actually have 2 guys from that company, from Slide Genius, that just joined our Leah Group coaching program. Super full circle. Shout out to Victor. Shout out to Derek. So very, very interesting full circle. Very grateful for the opportunity. But I just remember thinking, if I could buy these lots for $1,500, sell each one for $3,000, you know, everyone at that time, when they talked about land, everyone just talked about a double your money situation. So my math was double my money, even if it wasn't logical, even that's what the market wasn't telling you. I was thinking, buy for $1,500, sell for $3,000, that sounds about right. And I was thinking to myself, I could go sell both these properties and make $3,000. So I'm like, dude, that's literally what I'm making in 2 weeks, or maybe even a little bit longer than 2 weeks. Because I was commissioned, right? So some weeks were really low, some weeks were much higher. So I was just thinking, like, this is the greatest thing ever. And we went back and forth for weeks. We ended up not being able to make a deal. But what was so interesting is in the meantime, and I'm so glad I did this, I took it as confirmation that someone even called me back and negotiated. I said, I don't even care at a certain point if I got the deal or not. The fact that someone got my letter and called me back, that was the aha. Now, I was defeated that I didn't get the deal. Like, don't get me wrong. But the fact that someone actually returned a call for me, I was like, this is the craziest thing ever. And so what I did in the intro was I started putting together a real mailer. Now, I got a little smarter during this process. What I did was I got a data tree account, right? Went and downloaded data from Data Tree. You guys can get discounted pricing on that down below. Bar none, it's the bedrock of a land business. So went and got Data Tree account, started poking around at counties. There was no rhyme or reason as to why I chose this county. I'll tell you in a second. No rhyme or reason. It was relatively close to me and it was really cheap and it was close to Las Vegas, right? I was thinking rural market, proximity to a big market, cheap land, that equals a good combo. So I found a town called Pahrump in Nye County, Nevada. It's just west of Las Vegas, like probably 2.5 hours away from where I was in San Diego. So I thought, maybe I could drive out there if I needed to. And at the time, stuff was trading for a couple $1,000s. What's really interesting is that market's appreciated a ton. I mean, now some of these lots sell for $20,000 plus, and we were selling them for like $3,000 to $4,000, which is pretty amazing. So I downloaded the data from Data Tree. I said, this time I'm not going to handwrite the letters, and I'm going to add a price, a wisened up. So I went through and thought, okay, a lot of these deals look like they're selling for like $3,000 or so. I'm going to see if I can snake a really good deal. I'm going to try to triple my money, right? So that was my logic, right? I wasn't going off of anything else other than what I wanted to make, which is a very interesting philosophy. So downloaded the list from Pahrump. I went out for like 1/4 acres to 1/2 acre, somewhere like that, and went through and priced it at, I said, okay, $1,000 is what I'd want to buy it at. So I went in and priced it at $1,027.47. I tried to make it the weirdest number I possibly could because I figured the weirder the number, the more genuine it felt, right? An even number just feels illegitimate. It just feels made up. Someone's like, I'll pay you $1,000 for a property. That just seems so weird. And so I said, this time I'm going to use a mail house, right? So I priced the mailers, no rhyme or reason. I think I priced every property, whether it was a 1/4 acre or a 1/2 acre, exactly the same. Sent it off to Click to Mail, and they mailed it out and waited a couple weeks. And I remember I was just getting off of work. I think it was a Wednesday. I was driving back from work. So I was working in San Diego in Mission Valley, and I was living in Poway. So I was driving up north to Poway. I had like a 25-30 minute commute. Driving into Poway, and anytime I'd go into Poway before I got home, I'd stop at LA Fitness, right? That was a crappy little gym that I was using. Stopped at LA Fitness. I remember as I'm getting my gym duffel bag loaded up and getting out of the car, I get a call, and it's from an unknown number, and it said some foreign looking last name, something like Ting or something like that. I was like, what the heck? And at this point, I was on high alert. I was like, any call that's coming in, most likely is going to be a land seller. And at this point in my life, this is a little different now since I had my phone and the internet for so long. At this point, I was getting only calls from my family and my friends. So an outsider call, that was a big deal. Nowadays, I get so many spam calls, I just don't even answer my phone anymore. It's kind of unfortunate. So I take the call in the parking lot. The husband and wife, they lived up in the Bay Area up here in California, and they own land in Pahrump. And they were looking to take a trip back to the Philippines, and they needed to sell a property for money for their trip. And we didn't negotiate. They were happy with the offer. And so I had to piece together the weirdest closing process. And I don't know, somehow they trusted me. I said, okay, or somehow I trusted them rather. I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send over a deed to you, and I'm going to send over a cashier's check at the same time. They could have just cashed the cashier's check. I'm going to send a notary to come and meet you. And the notary came and met them. No, sorry, this is what I did. I sent the deed and the check to the notary, and the notary went and met them. That's right. They went and met them, signed the deed, transferred the money. The notary sends the deed back to me. And then I have this piece of paper. I'm like, what in God's name do I do with this? I'm like, I don't know what the next step is. All I know is you get a deed notarized, you get it signed, and I have no idea what to do next, right? So I get this deed and I start calling up the county in Nye County. And everyone in the county is like, dude, we can't give you legal advice. Like, you go hire a title company. Like, you need help. And I get this lady, I can't remember her name. I want to say it was Cheryl. I could totally be wrong. She worked in the county office in Nye County. What would be funny is now that I live in Las Vegas, I should go pay her a visit, honestly, because she changed everything for me in a really interesting way. She was nice enough, kind of off the record, to say, I'll show you how to do it. I had to make a correction to the legal description. I had no idea how to write a legal description correctly. Had to make an amendment to that. She showed me how to record it. I had to fill out a document, give them a recording fee. They recorded it, sent it back to me. And then I was like, oh my God, I am a real estate owner. It's so funny, buying $1,000 piece of land, you could have told me I was a millionaire, frankly. And this is what's so interesting. I think it's part of the reason that there's so much demand for land, is that land is deeply entrenched into the mindset of people in the US, right? Like, this goes back to the dawn of time, to the early times here in this country, where land was kind of like the highest form of wealth. It was your entryway into voting, and like that's still very much entrenched here. And funnily enough, I felt that getting this piece of land. I can start to understand why people bought these properties, even if they had no intent of ever using them. I was like, oh, I get it, right? So get the land. I didn't have any other place to list it. I didn't know what the MLS was. All I knew, Facebook Marketplace, familiar with it. Put it up on Facebook Marketplace. About 3 weeks or so go by. I actually found a guy on Facebook Marketplace as well to take photos of it. So I had him take photos on his iPhone, sent them over to me, then listed them on Facebook Marketplace. And about 3 weeks later, I sold it for, I want to say $2,700 or $3,000. One of those two. Forgive me, it's been a long time. The lady in Michigan, I do remember that. She was real chatty, real kind of wired, like very energetic. And she was like, sounded like she was running from something, frankly. She was like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of the cold. It's like maybe a snowbird or literally on the run. I'm not quite sure, one of the two. And so she PayPal'd me the money. I did what I said I was gonna do, notarized the deed, mailed it off to her, recorded it on her behalf. And that was the first land deal. And I always tell people, that's what happened, like just right in the veins. I was hooked and I just hit the ground running. And so that was the very beginning of 2020. At that point, it took me about 6-7 months to get my first deal. And I always tell people, dude, if you are trying to do this on your own, be prepared for it to take a very long time, 6 to 12 months to get your first deal, and potentially be ready to go through a lot of pain, aka temporarily or indefinitely losing money. We hear from people all the time that spend 25 grand in marketing, 50 grand in marketing, 100 grand in marketing, and get no deals. And I feel really fortunate that things worked out so smoothly, because had they not, maybe I wouldn't have continued to pursue this, right? And that's the biggest risk. Like, you let the market be your teacher, you run the risk of getting your ass kicked. I think it's in everyone's best interest to reallocate that capital and say, I'm going to do an apprenticeship, I'm going to do coaching, I'm going to do a course, and it could be anyone else's. I'm not talking for us, but frankly, it's a dangerous world out there. It's a dangerous game. It's a dog-eat-dog world, and you can get yourself in hot water really quick. And so the word to the wise is be careful. And sometimes creating a foundation via education will make you more faster, and you'll compound your efforts faster, right? And we look at people inside Leah, it's like they're getting their first deal in 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. What a different dynamic that is than waiting 7 months or whatever it was to get my first deal. I think it was longer, because I started sending out mail in the summer of 2019, and I got that first lead, I think, beginning of February, and so sold it by kind of like the end of February. So I hit the ground running from there. That first year, 2020, everyone got pushed out of work for COVID. We were still working, but we were just working from home, which worked out swimmingly for me. And it's funny, as you start to recount these stories, you start to understand all the little divine interventions to get you where you're at, right? All the little things that shaped your path. And I think it's really easy to get arrogant and callous and start to think that this was all me, this was all my doing, yada, yada, yada. And when I start recounting these stories, I start to understand, some people call it co-creating, right? Where it's like you and God or the universe or whatever it may be, there's this dance, you're cooperating together. And I look back at all the little divine interventions that got me to where I am today and where I continue to go. And so it's really interesting recounting these stories, right? It's so easy to think, I did this, I did that. And so we got pushed to work at home for COVID. Was amazing. At the time, my girlfriend and I were living in a, no joke, 400 square foot apartment, but it was in La Jolla, California. It was a block from the beach. It was right by Wind and Sea Beach. It was a magical little spot. We had a little German Shepherd. We had a beautiful little front patio, little fireplace. That same fireplace actually ended up catching on fire. My jacket burst into flames one night, but it was a great little pad. She was a hairdresser, so we were both home together during COVID, definitely kind of living on top of each other. But with that free time, it allowed me to dial in on the land business. And so I would work, frankly, I could get most of my work done in 2 to 3 hours a day. And I was still the top performer most months on the sales side. And then I would just work on the land biz. And no one really gave me any problems. I was always a little scared that something bad was going to happen or someone was going to catch on, but they never did. And thank God for that as well. So business started to grow. We hit just right under $100,000 profit that first year. And all along, my girlfriend's like, you got to quit, man. You got to go. Like, you are good at this. You love this. You're excited by this. Why are you staying any longer, right? And she was telling me that like middle of 2020. And I was really scared. Honestly. I don't know why, looking back. Like, I don't consider myself a fearful person. But I think what I was scared of is that I had something so good that I liked, that I felt like I was good at, that was fun, that was growing. And I was scared that by me becoming dependent on the income from the business, I was going to suck it dry, right? And I was going to limit our growth. And when I kept on rationalizing it, it's like, if I don't have to take any money out of this, it'll just keep on growing. And that was really enticing to me, right? I just leave it alone. I'll work my job even if I don't like it, and I just let this grow. She's like, dude, what you don't understand is that if you go all in on this, even if it has to support you, you being at this 8, 10, 12 hours a day, it'll grow way faster than it could even if you're working a job and not taking any money out of it. I think that was a really wise point. And I remember in December of 2020, she called me out. She's like, in more intense words, essentially, you're being a wuss. Like, just man up and just do it. So I put in my notice beginning of December, terrified. I said, hey, I'll be out January 1st. Everyone congratulated me. Everyone was very kind. I left on a very good note. And I remember January 1st, like I can't even tell you guys, the feeling of leaving was this palpable feeling of energy and excitement and nerves. I mean, anxiety and excitement are very much the same emotion, right? And I felt both. And I'll never forget, I was like the second or third day of being full-time in my land business. And I remember going to the gym at 9 a.m. And I felt like I was doing the sneakiest, craziest, dirtiest thing. I'm like, I can't believe I'm able to do this. This is so crazy. Because I had been locked up in some respect. I'm very much a kind of a freedom-minded person. I feel like it's something that I really yearn for. And I had allowed myself to get put in a cage for a year to benefit my future self, right? And stepping out of that cage, I was like the phoenix rising from the ashes. And so just hit it hard. I remember having a lot of anxiety around where the heck do I spend my time? How do I grow this thing? And so I spent most of January just trying to reverse engineer and understand the business, right? Bought myself a new computer, set up an office inside of our one-room house, our 400 square foot apartment, and just started to hit it hard. And at the end of January, something really interesting happened. So at the company I was working at, Slide Genius, I had become friends with the CEO, Rick. I'd become friends with other sales guys. I'd become friends with my boss. His name was Daniel Madison, who was the VP of sales. And I just thought this guy was the bee's knees. He was so smooth, well-spoken, was a closer, was super funny, super kind. And we hit it off. He was like 10 years my senior. But we were buds, and he was just a super, super good dude. And I remember he reached out to me at the end of January and asked if I'd be interested in working together. He wanted to come on board. And what was ironic is while I was working that job at Slide Genius, I was telling people, I was spreading the good word of land. Like, this is insane. I'm buying random dirt properties in the middle of nowhere and selling them for 400% returns. And like, everyone kind of thought it was a gimmick. They're like, it's a fluke. It won't last. Everyone's kind of poo-pooing it. And when I left, it validated the idea. And everyone was kind of like, oh shit. Okay. This is real. And he reached out in January, said, dude, what do you think about coming on and growing this thing together? And frankly, what was interesting is I remember feeling unqualified to grow the business, which is ironic. I really felt like, I don't know if I have the chops to grow this into something big. And I knew we were going to grow into, or I was going to grow into something big. And eventually I was like, I knew this was our goal for 2021, or my goal at the time was to do $1 million. And I knew we were going to do it and we're going to keep on growing from there. But I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't think I had the acumen to run a business operationally. I didn't think I knew how to hire. I had a lot of limiting beliefs there because I'd only done things 0 to 1, right? I had been the hustle guy, duct tape solutions together, get it to 0 to 1. That was my game. I didn't know anything about running a business. I knew some stuff about starting a business, and even that was limited. And when he came to me, it was like a gift from the gods. I was like, dude, you are what I need. Because this guy single-handedly grew Slide Genius from like 2 million to like $6 or $7 million, pretty much. I mean, obviously a lot of other people contributed, but he was the guy kind of running point on everything. He was a VP of sales, but he did pretty much A to Z in the operations. And so he really understood what it looked like to take a business from big-ish to really big, and I thought he could do the same for us. So he joined us. I had no idea how to divvy up our roles. I knew nothing about, building roles or anything along those lines. I didn't know what roles were good for a land business. So I just said, I'm the guy that does the mailing. You're the guy that does the property stuff, like talk to the sellers, talk to the buyers. You're the phone guy. I'm the guy to go make sure that we have leads in the pipeline. I just figured that was a good way to divvy it up. He was really smooth on the phones as well. So that's what we did. And we did not have any money to buy land, or we just didn't. We had a little bit, but we really didn't want to use our own funds to buy land. We had never raised money before. So I started raising money on the side, just JV stuff, friends, family, colleagues, anyone I could that wanted to kind of get in on the action. We used to do something called fireside chats with the Land Pioneer every Thursday. I did a Zoom meeting. It's funny, a lot of our initial LEA students actually came from those Zoom meetings years ago, way back in the day. I wish you could find those somewhere. And then we also got a lot of folks that would come on, were interested in what we were doing, and then wanted to kind of get involved, either by doing deals with us and partnering or starting their own land business. And so we went hard in North Carolina. I did not know anything about intelligently mailing, about picking markets. I mean, I knew nothing. All I would say is this state looks hot. I hear a lot of people talking about it. I would literally pull data for a third of a state, a half of a state, a whole state. One time I mailed half of the bottom of Colorado. I just thought that was a good strategy. And somehow I thought I could intelligently price it. It's just hilarious. It's like I was doing everything I preach not to do now, right? I would go and pull, a couple thousand records for an entire state and try to price it out. And then we'd mail it. And sure enough, we would only get leads for the worst properties because I was pricing the best stuff so low, like, probably 10% of what it was worth. And the only fair offers we had were for the really cheap stuff. And so did everything wrong, but we started to piece together deals in North Carolina, started to have some success. And really most of that came down to his ability on the phone. I mean, I watched this guy take properties down from, hey, the seller wants $100,000 to we're buying it for $15,000. And the guy was a master on the phone. He got deals for $1 multiple times. Like, he was so good at working sellers. And if I could hire him again as an acquisition manager, I certainly would. And so we bought a portfolio of deals in North Carolina, had this crazy story where we ended up selling it to a private equity firm. We sold all the deals in one kind of tranche altogether. It was a horrible experience. They really nickeled and dimed us and pushed us around. And every time, okay, we're a day out from closing, they'd come back and renegotiate. And we could be a day out from closing again, they'd come back and renegotiate. And that was their strategy, right? Some people in real estate, this is a bona fide strategy. They get you to the closing table just to hit you with a renegotiation. Because the psychology of the seller at that point is they're so bought in, they've already spent that money in their head that they're just like, okay, I'll take a little bit less. I'll take a little bit less. I think it's a really malicious strategy, and it's not something that we do in our business today, but some people do like to do that. Even if there's nothing that materially has changed about the property, that's their game. Funnily enough, the way it worked out, I think we had like 15 properties that we sold at once. Some of the properties they like way overpaid for. Like they paid like 10% over retail. And then some deals they got at a really good price. It was very odd. I still don't know what they did with them. Like 2 years later, I saw they still had the properties listed online. I have no idea what their play was there. Essentially what they told us, that they had raised a bunch of money on Wall Street and they were trying to deploy it into land. But it made no sense. Like, why are you guys not doing your own marketing? Like they wanted to buy from other land investors. They were kind of like doing a land banking deal, but they were also trying to flip them. It really made no sense to me. But we walked out. Well, us personally, we made like $100,000 on the whole package, and everyone that was a partner, they all got paid out and made really good returns. And so we had like a really good proof of concept. We had money that we could go redeploy because everyone wanted to work with us again, and we had made $100,000, and we did it pretty quick. That deal closed like beginning of April. We got the deal in February, and we had to work it for forever. Well, at that point in April, Dan was having another baby, and him and his wife were gonna move back to upstate New York, and his wife needed a little more stability. Frankly, like the business, like we were getting good traction, but like they needed money now kind of thing. It's okay, well, we just made $100,000. That really all needs to go back in the business. And she was like, hey, like we need to be seeing like at least 10K a month from this. And we could have done that, but I was so scared of throttling our growth. Like that was always a big concern for me was, okay, are we going to just throttle the growth and ruin this thing by trying to get overzealous and start paying ourselves? And so him and I ended on a really good note. He said, you know what? I'm going to go get a regular job for the family. We're going to move back to New York. And I wish you all the best kind of thing. And it ended on really good terms. I think him and I were both really sad to not be working together. I liked the security of working with him. I liked how he handled his role. We had all sorts of problems. Like we didn't know how to run the business. We tried hiring. We hired a bunch of duds. Like we did a lot of things wrong, but him and I worked really well together. But he had to do what he had to do. And so he left in April. And right before he had left, we started doing interviews for a new VA. We had hired a really interesting VA that gave us all sorts of problems. Nice guy, but was just giving us weird, like he would just disappear for a week, come back 2 weeks later, come back, disappear again. It's crazy on-off cycle. And we knew so little, at least I knew so little about hiring. I was too scared to fire anyone. I was just like really nice and, it just was not a benefit to the business. So we ended up parting ways with that VA right before Dan left. He had scheduled a bunch of interviews. And one of those guys was a gentleman named Newman. And before Dan left, he had an interview with Newman. Then Dan left, and Dan was like, hey, I got this candidate. His name's Newman. I think you should talk to him. He might be a really good fit for the business. And I tell you what, Newman started at $4 or $5 an hour. I can't remember. I was scared out of my mind to hire someone and have them on payroll. Like, I was terrified by that idea. But Newman and I had a Zoom meeting, and we really resonated. He lived in Pakistan. He managed a taxi company in the UK. He was a manager and did like dispatching for them and stuff like that. So he had experience in operations, experience kind of managing teams, but zero experience in land. But him and I really resonated. And I'm not like one to get too deep into zodiac signs, but our birthdays are like 2 days apart. We're both Tauruses. I don't know, we just really gelled very well. He was very well spoken, very kind, very thoughtful. And I honestly could tear up thinking about it. Like, Newman single-handedly changed our business and changed my life. And I know his life has changed. And we've really become essentially like family, even though we live, 7,000 miles apart or something crazy like that. And so this was starting in May. Newman came on. I had him as the jack of all trades. I'm like, dude, you're going to do everything and the day-to-day. List properties, talk to sellers, talk to buyers, add leads, update KPIs, find photographers, find title companies. Like, he was just running around doing a million different things. And I wanted to change the focus of the business. Now, we were doing a lot of these cash deals, and I didn't really like the model. I had always been drawn to the owner finance model. And a lot of people in the land space preach passive income and this and that. And I was really keen on that. I'm like, okay, this sounds cool. I had built up probably $2 or $3 grand a month in owner financing notes. And I really liked that model. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go all in on that. And I hated working with deal partners. I hated that experience. Like, we had dozens of deal partners, and some of them were doing $6,000 properties, and they wanted an update every week. And I just hated that experience. I was like, I never want to do that again. I didn't like the stress of it. I didn't like the managing of expectations. I just did not like that process. So I said, I only want to use our own money, and I want to go after building a big owner finance portfolio, right? I was like, I kept on having this number in my mind, $50,000 a month of recurring revenue. And what's pretty miraculous is from May until December, we built up our owner finance portfolio to $20,000 a month in 7 months. It was insane. I mean, like, what Newman and I did was ridiculous. And now, right at this time, beginning of May, I get out of a 3-year relationship. My girlfriend at the time ended up seeing someone else, if you will, in nice terms, and broke my heart. We had some problems towards the end. There's 2 sides to that story, but I was heartbroken, and we had just moved into a new house in April. So things were starting to look up in the business. We moved out of the 400 square foot house into a 2-bedroom house in La Jolla, again, like 2 blocks away from Winton Sea. And then that happens in May. And so Dan leaves, my girlfriend leaves, I'm in this house by myself. I'm scared shitless. I'm scared out of my mind. I just bring on my first real employee, and I'm freaked out. But I've learned something in life, like fear and anxiety, right? Such a fine line between excitement. And what I did is I just took that energy and just re-pivoted it towards excitement. And there was so much energy pent up in me. And I just dove in full force in my business like a machine. I mean, when I tell you that we went in, I put my heart and soul, I put everything I had on the line, and I did nothing pretty much but work. I mean, I put my life on the line in the business and just went all in. And we went from $2,000 a month or so in owner finance sales and owner finance recurring revenue to $20,000 a month in recurring revenue by December. I think we sold like 200 plus properties in that time period. It was insane. A lot of small dollar lots. About 25% of those deals were cash sales. So we had like $15,000 to $25,000 a month of gross profit from cash sales. Everything was notary close on the buy, notary close on the sale, and just went at it so hard. And it was one of the most fun chapters of my life, one of the most challenging chapters of my life. At the time, for whatever reason, I didn't want to be in the same bedroom that I used to share with my partner. And so we had an office, and I would just sleep on the floor in the office. It's like one of those cheesy startup stories, but it's the truth. I just slept on the hardwood floor in the office, would wake up, immediately get to work, would work till sundown, would go walk on the beach, come back, work till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I brought in one of my high school best friends who was relocating from San Francisco to San Diego. He came and moved in with me. What was interesting is when he moved in, his girlfriend broke up with him like within 30 days of living in the house. And his girlfriend and him have been together for like 5 years. Happy to say they're back together now. So him and I were both heartbroken in this house. He was a W-2 where I worked a normal job and was just like weirded out by my work habits. I mean, just all I did. It's all I thought about. I slept, ate, and breathed my business. And Newman, through that time, started to rise through the ranks. Pay started to increase. Responsibility started to increase. We started bringing on new employees. By the end of the year, we had a team of 4 people. And I remember in December of 2021, my mom and myself and my little sister took a trip up to Mount Shasta in California. Ironically, my mom had also just started getting out of a marriage as well. Very weird timing, all of this. So it's just the 3 of us that went to Mount Shasta. And I did some soul searching. I was like thinking about how to grow the business, and I just could not imagine doing more deals than we did, right? We did like 225 deals or something like that year. I was like, I just don't think that the path to growing is to do 500 deals next year. I just could not feasibly think about how we could even approach that. Like, how could we tackle that problem? And so the only thing I could think of was we got to go after bigger deals. And so I texted a lot of the old partners that we'd worked with and said, hey guys, deal funding's back on. We're going after big deals this year. We're going to hit it hard. And sure enough, in 2022, that's what we did. We pretty much repivoted, started going after bigger deals, did $2.8 million in sales. Vast majority of those were cash sales, and started to hit it really hard. Started going after multiple 5-figure, 6-figure deals, and started to learn that process, started to refine our strategies. And really what I did in 2022 was I got really serious about hiring. I started to realize every time I started to clarify a role and bring someone new on, my business grew. My business, like, it was like this perfect one-to-one parallel relationship. And so a lot of my energy went from kind of starting to disconnect myself from the business and pouring into bringing on team members. And that's when things got really, really exciting. The business started to take off. I started having $175,000, $150,000 profit months. Like, my life started to change. One of the coolest chapters of my life. What was interesting is in the middle of that year, I started to hit a fulfillment crisis. I think it was burnout. I was using this energy from this breakup, and that energy started to slowly dwindle and become less meaningful. I started to achieve a lot of the goals that I had set for myself, and the fulfillment started to decline. It's like this terrible relationship where it's like the more I got, the less meaningful it became. It's like this just weird diminishing return situation. And I remember in July of 2022, I took a whitewater rafting trip, 5 days up in Oregon. I went with my dad, I went with my aunt, went with my grandparents. We went whitewater rafting out in the forest in the Rogue River in Southern Oregon. And I was talking to them about my predicament, what I was feeling, and telling them, like, I just want to do something where I actually feel like I'm helping people. And the land business is cool, but it's highly transactional. And frankly, you don't really feel like you're changing anyone's life. And so I remember one night, we're all eating dinner by the river. We had just done like probably 15 miles or so of paddling. Everyone's tired, everyone's feeling good. And my aunt is super cool, very well educated, very smart. She'd been a college professor and a high school teacher for a long time. And she was making this transition to starting a relationship coaching business. She was really into relationships and just the beauty of meeting people and kind of the science and psychology behind it. And she was redirecting kind of her educational, kind of formal teaching training to apply that to being a coach. She's like, Sumner, you know everything, or a lot, everything in their eyes. I feel like I know very little, but about building land businesses and about land. She's like, why don't you teach other people to do that? That would be meaningful, and look at the impact that it's had on your life, that would resonate with others. And I was like, yeah, but I've always poo-pooed the coaches, course creators, consultant, influencer type. I'm like, dude, I don't know, those people kind of annoy me. The internet marketers, I'm like, I just don't really know if I want to be that guy. It's like the classic syndrome of, if it's so good, why are you teaching other people how to do it, kind of thing, you know? Like, I didn't really want to be that person. And so she said that on a Tuesday or on a Wednesday, one of the two on the trip, and the trip was ending on Friday. I remember every day while we're paddling, I just kept on thinking about that. I'm like, God, it's so interesting. What would that be like? What would that look like? And I remember on the last day on Friday, we're eating dinner, make an announcement. I'm like, all right, guys, I just want to say this publicly. I'm going to commit to building out a community for land investors. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. And for me, I'm like, you guys don't understand. Like, I'm going to give this my all. I'm like, this isn't something I'm going to try. I'm going to do everything in my power. I'm going to give it my all, and we'll assess if it makes me feel better. So I get back from the trip in the middle of July, and from July until September 1st, all I did, I locked myself in my room, planned out the community, the course, what the coaching would look like, broke everything down, and for about 2.5 months, all I did was film modules. 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and luckily at that point, I had freed myself up from the business enough to where I could kind of redirect my attention and my efforts. That's all I did. and I drove myself freaking crazy. I didn't see anyone. I didn't leave my room. It was beautiful, sunny San Diego summer. Locked myself in my room, no AC, fan on, sweating bullets. You can probably see it in some of their original Leah modules. And I just filmed and just poured my heart out. And we released September 1st. And what's interesting is, like, in years prior, I had done one-off coaching. I had a handful of people I did coaching with. I do like a 4-week coaching arrangement. I charged $2,500 for 4 weeks of my time. And it was just one-to-one. Like, I didn't have any recorded modules or anything. I would just pour into them one-to-one, teach them everything I knew. And we had a bunch of really insane results. Like, I had someone make 100 grand. I had a guy make like 50 grand 40 grand, I think, on 2 deals. I had one guy go full time. I did some consulting for other land investors. So I'd already done a little bit of it. And we got like frequent inbound requests, people reaching out through our website, like, hey, curious about what you do. Could I learn from you, kind of thing? And I always just mostly shied it away. It's like mainly people that were in my network that I said yes to. And so we released September 1st, no following, no YouTube, no Instagram, no nothing, and started sharing it on YouTube at that point, started sharing it on Instagram and showing people what I was doing. And the first month, I think we had like 4 people join. The next month, we had like 5 people join. And then November, things started to pick up towards the end of the month. I think we had like 7 or 8 people join. And then December, things went like, whoa, hockey stick. And in September, I think we had like 12, 15 people join. And then January, stuff went crazy. In January, I don't even know what happened. Like, I blacked out. Stuff got so crazy. I remember January, things started relatively slow. I went on a podcast with Jesse from Pebble, and it just went parabolic. I mean, every day we'd have like 5 to 7 people join the program, and it just started taking off. And I was scared, honestly. I was like, dude, what if this gets bigger than I can manage? This is getting kind of out of hand. And so I started scrambling, trying to hire people to help me and starting to assemble a team. And it's every month since then just compounded and grown and grown. And about 100 people or so every month join our community. Our YouTube channel went from 0 to, I don't know, almost 6,000 subscribers since September. And it's just like taken off. And if you're asking, well, did it solve the problem of fulfillment? Yes. Yes, it did. It's frankly, most people may not know this, but this has changed my life more than anything else has. The camaraderie, the friendships, the relationships, the fun, the fulfillment is greater than anything I could have asked for. And it's funny because the advice came from such a random source. My aunt, who's a dating coach, said you should do something similar. And it's literally checked every box. And in fact, it's almost become a problem because I think about it too much. I obsess over it, both in terms of how the members are doing, in terms of making it better, in terms of getting the word out there, in terms of helping people. Like, it's changed my life probably more than anyone realizes. And so it's been a really crazy ride. And it's funny to condense 4 years into such a short little video. There has been a lot of twists and turns in between there, but I think I did a decent job recounting the highlights. And I think this is a really interesting exercise. At least it's been an interesting exercise for me, but for anyone, like, to take some time, whether it's speaking out loud, sharing with people, writing it in a journal, to recognize how far you've come. It gives you a lot of perspective. And I think it's really easy in the land game or in any business to get down on yourself, to look at others, to compare, to compete. And some of that's natural, some of that's good, but there needs to be recognition. You watching this video have probably come way further than you could ever realize, or further than you often realize, at least. I think when you take time to recount the stories, it's really fascinating, and it gives me a lot of gratitude, and it makes me want to pat myself on my back and say, wow, Sumner, like, you have come far. And I think a lot of us that are this kind of entrepreneur character, we thrive on our own internal constructive criticism. And we always play this game of iteration and improvement. And that usually means not recognizing any of your triumphs, not recognizing your progress. And beyond that, I think to recognize this has not been all me, right? To think about all the people that have helped me along the way, to think about all the lucky breaks, to think about all the good fortune. I just have to say, holy crap, it feels like it was almost meant to be, or on some level, when you're so attracted to an idea, the world starts rearranging to suit you. I always think about, you almost start to bend reality to meet your will. And that's really what this story feels like to me. And I think anyone that's become hyper obsessed with any idea or doing anything can recognize that the world cooperates with you. When you're half out, half in, the world does not start bending to assist you. But I swear, when you commit to something, it's like the gates of the world just open up and it's yours for the taking. And it feels like co-creating to me. This is not something I've done on my own. There have been so many people along the way that have assisted me. So many people have inspired me. And I just feel really lucky, frankly. I feel really lucky to be in the position that I'm in. And the fact that you'd even want to watch this video and even care enough to watch it is miraculous to me. And so I hope that on some level I can provide something that's valuable to you, whether it's just this story or information around land or doing something to impact your life, because frankly, that's why I'm sitting in this seat. I ran into a place in my life where I did not feel like I was doing anything to help my friends, my neighbors, my community, anyone in the world. I was just about me getting more, me accomplishing my goals. And it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Yes, you need to check off your goals. You need to put on your mask first on the airplane, right? Like you need to help yourself, but beyond a certain point, that does not give you fulfillment. You check off your basic needs and you start moving up Maslow's pyramid, right? You start focusing on more important things, and a lot of that comes down to helping others. And frankly, it's all I think about now. It's in my blood and I'm obsessed. And so all I can say is thank you for everyone that's supported. And again, I hope it's been reciprocal, and I hope I have provided something or can provide something down the line. Now, if this resonated with you and you're saying, Sumner, this story is what I want to play out. I want to do this. I know I can do this. Then I want to talk to you. I invite you to down below. You can schedule a call with myself and the team. See if we can help you. I really believe that we have mastered the art of teaching people not only how to master the skill of land investing, but how to build a land investing business that buys back their time, that gives them freedom, that allows themselves to start asking bigger questions about their life. Because frankly, you can only do that when your core needs are met, and this business can give that to you. And I want everyone to have that opportunity to start asking the bigger questions, to start understanding, why was I put here? How can I give back? But I feel like those questions can only be answered once we kind of get out of the day-to-day, once we can get out of the hustle and bustle of our business or the hustle and bustle of trying to meet our needs or our family's needs. Once you can start solving those problems, life opens up and you can start asking and answering bigger questions. So I invite you, the link is down below. Thank you guys for watching this video. Take care.